Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are, and welcome to this webinar on the topic of getting the best performance and reliability out of Kafka and Spark applications. My name is Kwok, and I'm joined by the legendary Chris Santiago, who is our Solution Engineering Director. Hi, Chris, how are you?
Long Doing time well. It's been a long time since we've talked.
How was your extended time off?
It was good. It's good. You know, sometimes you just need a break, you know, especially during these times.
Yeah.
To have to hit the reset button, you know, but I'm ready. Ready to go.
Yeah. Well, so before we start, let's go through some housekeeping rules. If you do have any questions, feel free to pop them into the questions box. Type in your question and we'll answer them live at the end of this session. This webinar is available instantly on demand, so if you do have to drop off, feel free to come back to this page and listen at your leisure. Let us know what you think about this session by rating the webinar and letting us know if there's any topics you'd like to hear about. Or if you just really like the webinar and you want to get in touch, feel free to pop that in the comment section. And we do have a specific link in the attachments section as well. So we're running a big day-long virtual event with over 30 presenters talking about all things data operations, data engineering, and so on. So do check out Data Ops Unleashed, broadcasting live on the 17th of March from the morning PST time all the way up to the end of day. Without any further ado, I'm going to now hand over to Chris, who will start the presentation. Cheers, Chris.
All right. Thanks, Kwok. Thanks for the warm introduction. Hello, folks, wherever you are virtually. Good morning, good evening. My name again, I'd like to, you know, just say my name again and put my pretty face on there. But Chris Santiago, I lead the Solutions Engineering Group over here at Unravel Data. Been with the company for a little over 3 years. It's been a fun journey. One of the greatest things that I like about this job is that I work with some really, really talented folks, really smart individuals, you know, primarily in the modern data, big data industry. And I come across a lot of use cases. And now, you know, Unravel, the company that I work for, you know, general observability, intelligence platform for your modern data and applications. But I really like working with some of the folks that do a lot of, you know, real-time streaming type of use cases, right? You know, technology like Kafka, like Flink, like Spark streaming, you know, all really, really great stuff, and really kind of blew up, you know, in the advent of big data and some of the new potential use cases that you can do with this new, well, not necessarily new anymore, but with this streaming technology. And there's a number of different services that, you know, that I've seen customers use for managing, monitoring, and supporting, you know, real-time streaming use cases. But what I'm going to do for today's conversation is really focus in on, you know, really getting the best performance and reliability out of your Kafka and your Spark applications. So think of like the Kafka Spark application stack. You know, obviously you can, you know, we can go other ways with all the different technologies, but, you know, by far the most popular that I've seen is really, you know, using Kafka and, you know, like a Spark streaming type of application for, you know, really getting the biggest bang for your buck for your real-time streaming applications. What I'd like to start off is kind of like talk about, hey, what are we talking about? What's the context of this discussion and what I'll be covering? And it's really going to be this type of architecture where you've got some producers that are, you know, bringing in data, whether this be IoT devices, whether this be some mainframe database that's sending it over to, you know, some more modern streaming applications. And so, you know, you're going to have like these producers putting in this data. They're going to be sending it into a message queuing system like a Kafka environment that's, you know, fault tolerant, distributed, all the good stuff that Kafka gives you. Very, very powerful, very, very popular, right? Then you would typically see some sort of compute engine reading this data, doing something with it, whether it be something more real time like fraud detection, or maybe it's, you know, sending this information to another Kafka stream or another Spark application, whatever it may be, but this is the one that's going to be handling all the logic and kind of making decisions on what needs to be done. And then last but not least, can't forget about what's the end state, right? Could it be going to console? Could it be going to memory? Could it be going into files? And so as a real-time architect, you're never really looking at just one thing. If you're responsible for managing the whole thing, it's a lot of things, right? Whether it's the producers, whether it's Kafka itself, whether it's Spark, whether it's the end state with the data where it's being resided, lots of challenges, right? And a common challenge that people have is, hey, my downstream users were expecting data 3 hours ago, 5 hours ago, yesterday, 24 hours ago. They're not seeing the data, right? And as you, as a person that's responsible for this, there's a lot of places where you can look at, right? Is it the data streams, like the producers? Like, was there an issue with, these folks that are, actually bringing, creating these messages and sending it over? Is there an issue there? That's something that somebody responsible for managing this needs to look at. Would it be something on Kafka, right? So Kafka, great system, but there's configurations that you need to do, whether it be, do I have the right amount of brokers? Do I have, the right amount of topics? Are they partitioned right? There's a lot of things that you do from a Kafka admin perspective. And so you want to make sure that things are tuned appropriately from that standpoint. Now, from Kafka, there's also the interaction between, what is that service that's reading all the information that's coming in from Kafka, right? And so that would be like your consumer groups, right? And so are they reading in the right data? Are we tracking, as the data is coming in, if I'm getting 1,000 messages in per day or per hour, am I outputting, close to 1,000 or messages per hour as well, right? And so that interaction between, the Kafka platform, and in this case, Spark, that's something where there could be a bottleneck, right? And something that we need to look at. It could even be Spark itself. And so as a Spark developer, lots of configuration, lots of parameters that you can do in terms of, did I set up my right micro map batching configuration? Did I set up enough memory? Is it too much memory? How many partitions should I be reading? So on and so forth. There's a plethora of options to look at here. And maybe it isn't anything to do with Spark. Maybe it might be something else, right? But it's just another thing to look at, right? And last but not least, at the end state, like the files, right? Where we're writing to. One common pattern that I see a lot, especially with some more junior folks, is maybe they're doing some sort of micro batching architecture and they're submitting files like every few seconds, kilobytes of size, and then it ends up being like a small files issue on that end state. And while it might not affect the performance as the data is streaming in, it's going to affect the performance of folks that maybe are the consumers of this data. And that's something to keep in mind, right? So really the net of it all is there's a lot of things that can happen here. And so I feel for you guys, the folks that are responsible for, these streaming applications, because it could be Spark, it could be Kafka, it could be the producers, it could be the consumer groups, it could be the data that you're residing into or where it's actually being written to. And you're responsible for figuring this stuff out, right? Now, you do have some options. So we'll start off from a Kafka side. And I'll breeze through this. I'm sure the folks that are in this webinar know a lot of this stuff, but it's always good to kind of level set here. But you always have good old Kafka command line, right? And so if you've configured Kafka, this should not look this should not look foreign to you. But it's a great tool for obviously configuring Kafka. I mean, this is where you would set all this stuff up. But you can also use some other features on the Kafka command line in terms of how are the messages in, messages out going on, how's my offset, so on and so forth. Very, very, very powerful tool, with the caveat that, hey, if you are a command line genius, then you may be comfortable for doing this, right? But maybe you might be working with some other folks that may be a little bit more junior. Maybe they're used to working with going into like a web-based portal to kind of manage this kind of stuff. And the learning curve of this may be a little bit tricky, right? But you do have this at your arsenal, something that if you are trying to troubleshoot Kafka and you don't want to spend any additional dollars on anything else, this is always a great place to start. If you want to extend Kafka, I've also seen a lot of customers use, very, very popular open source observability platforms like Grafana, where the community is a very, very great community where they have a lot of plugins that are built in, and then all you really need to do is just kind of import these dashboards, set up your data sources, and you're off to the races, right? And so here's an example of in Kafka, you have Kafka provides JMX endpoints, where really what it is just giving you exactly what you're seeing here, right? In terms of like, how is CPU usage over my brokers? How are my messages trending over time? My bytes in, my bytes out. So from an observability standpoint, Grafana is a very excellent tool. There's other ones that are out here, but I'd like to highlight the popular ones that I've seen customers use. And it almost is as easy as plug and play to get kind of this observability. Now, mind you, from a Grafana Kafka standpoint, it's going to be just showing you exactly what you're seeing here, right? So it's CPU usage, messages in, bytes out. There really still is some onus of the admin here to kind of look at this, correlate the data, maybe do a combination of stuff that they're seeing from the the Kafka CLI and what they're seeing from Grafana, and then kind of figure out what that root cause is, right? But again, excellent tools. If you guys aren't doing it today and you're looking for some ideas, hopefully this gives you some ideas. And so in the whole scheme of things right now, really what we've been focusing in on is like getting information in terms of the information that's coming in from the producers, getting information that's coming in from Kafka, right? Whether it's my broker configuration, whether it's my topics set up that are set up correctly, or my partitions, so on and so forth. And so in the scope of things that we've shown so far today, this is what we've covered so far. So with these options, there are a couple of things that you should consider, right? The benefits is, hey, free 99. Nothing's, that's always a great place to start. And I recommend folks that, hey, you have a lot of great tools at your arsenal. Go ahead and learn them, right? The CLI is obviously included. Command line interface is automatically included with installation. So have at it. You can, use it. It's a very, very powerful tool to really get insights on what's going on from your Kafka platform. And then if you want to extend that, very, very easily visualizations from I didn't mean to say just Grafana, but there's a lot of other, great observability open source platforms that are out there, but more and more I see Grafana out there, and it's pretty easy for you to use. Why not? Some considerations that if you are going to go down this kind of out of box route, is that there is some Kafka expertise, right? Running Kafka and setting it up, using the command line to kind of, really understand what's going on in your Kafka environment. You're going to need to have some folks that have spent some time in Kafka to really help make the best decisions and really make the best observations from within that tool. There are some configurations that we need to do if you want to do Grafana, although it's a little bit easy, but there are some things that, if we wanted to extend the Grafana, that's something that we would need to do. And then again, last but not least, it's really giving you partial visibility, right? When you're talking about your platform here, maybe the issue isn't Kafka, maybe it is Spark, maybe it is the data that you're landing in. And you don't get that if you're just using some of the Kafka tools that you get for free, open source, or out of the box. A second great option would be Confluent Kafka. So Confluent Kafka is from the makers of, or the main makers of Kafka. They've provided an excellent ecosystem where you can get even more visibility into what's going on from within your Kafka environment, right? So if trying to manage this is by yourself is not enough, and you want to not only get some features that just work out of the box and then some. And so like if you're thinking about like more like security, enterprise grade features, Confluent Kafka is a very, very, very great tool. It's something that they host themselves. But hey, if you're okay with that, you do have some deeper insights. You can do a lot more. There's a lot of things from an enterprise standpoint that Confluent Kafka does provide you. Same thing though, from an observability standpoint, we're still, talking about, very Kafka focused things, right? If there was happening something with your Spark streaming application, for example, you're very limited into the visibility on what you have, because Confluent Kafka is going to be very solely focused on what's going on Kafka, in Kafka alone, right? Same thing in terms of like benefits. Yeah, created by the Kafka creators, so that you've got great quality, committers to the Kafka product, and they can. That's always a good thing, to be working with a company that's backed with the folks that basically made it, right? Deeper insights into bottlenecks. So if you are having some performance challenges, they do have some great features built into the tool itself. And so, yeah, go ahead and leverage that. Last but not least, more and more enterprise grade customers tend to use Confluent Kafka because, hey, some of the stuff just works out of the box. I don't want to deal with the headache myself. Maybe I have some kind of stringent security requirements. Confluent Kafka can just work out of the box from that standpoint. But there's always considerations. So Confluent Kafka is not free. At least they do have a trial. But if you're going to continue to use it, it is a paid subscription. So you are paying a company to do that. And how comfortable are you with having a third party managing your data, right? Maybe not be so much of an issue for you, but if it is for folks like that, it's something to keep in mind. But again, very, very powerful tool. If you're trying to up your game on your Kafka observability, Confluent Kafka is a very excellent tool to research for your whole streaming architecture. Now, we've spoken a lot on Kafka. Let's give some love to Spark, right? And so from a Spark observability standpoint, I'm running, and by the way, this is in the concepts of Spark streaming, but you always have good old trusty Spark UI. In fact, this is kind of like the de facto kind of interface for folks to really understand what's going on with their job stages, so on and so forth. We won't go into the detail of everything that Spark UI does, but very, very good tool that just comes out of the box if you have a Spark configuration, and it's going to give you some good insights in the context of Spark. So think drivers, executors, the SQL, that sort of nature, right? So it's going to have that kind of lens on what's going on from a Spark interface. And then there's also Grafana as well. As you can tell, I love Grafana myself. And, they do, again, have a very, very excellent community where you have a lot of plug and play reports. And so here's an example of Spark Grafana dashboard that's going to give you things in terms of what's my driver memory usage over time, my executor memory usage over time, how are things trending from a time series perspective. And so again, great tool to add on, just as extensible as it is from a Kafka standpoint. So why not use it, right? But from a Spark observability standpoint, again, we're going to be very focused in on what's going on with Spark. So if there was an issue with Kafka, say the producer stopped sending in data, Spark won't know about that. If Kafka was just poorly, under-resourced, right? And it's like you've got all these messages that are coming in and we can't keep up with it. You won't be able to tell that. You would only be able to tell from the consumer group side of, hey, is Spark able to keep up, right? And then last but not least, when you're writing all this stuff into memory, into files, are you writing it into an optimized format? Are we thinking about small files? Are we writing it into the correct, table format? Whatever it may be. It's really, for the most part, it's going to be very focused in from a Spark standpoint. So some of the benefits from a Spark UI Grafana type combination, and again, you can extend this with other awesome third-party observability tools, but again, included with Spark. Why not? Definitely continue to use it. Has ease of visualization integration with Grafana, just like everything else. But from a consideration standpoint, it does expect when you are using Spark UI, there is a level of expertise of you kind of know what you're doing. You don't want to have somebody who's just starting off with Spark and just give them Spark UI. I mean, yes, it's a good tool for that, but there is a level of expertise to kind of understand exactly what's going on, so which screens to look at to troubleshoot some of these things. Just like on the Kafka side, very partial observability from a Spark standpoint, right? So it's going to be very Spark centric. And so if you're looking for things in terms of hey, I want to get even deeper, on that executor, host level metrics, container level metrics. So think of on that executor level, I can see how much, resources were allocated, but how much was actually used, right? Like perfect example would be like, I've got an executor, I want to give it 4 vCores and I wanted to give it 64 gigs of RAM. And then I may have like 50 of those executors. Obviously that's a application that's going to be eating up a lot of resources, but were you even using it, right? A lot of these schedules don't even, when you ask for specific resources, it's not going to tell you, hey, you've actually could have done this executor configuration with 75% resources, right? And so you're missing some of that stuff. And so some things to keep in mind, right? Now, what if there was a single pane of glass for all, right? A tool that can give you insights from the producer side, can give you insights on, hey, do I even have my infrastructure set up from within Kafka correctly? Can give you insights into the interaction between whatever your consumer group is to Kafka. How am I keeping up with my log, my offsets? That would be good. Spark, hey, whatever insights you can provide me above and beyond from what I get from within the Spark UI, that's also going to be great. And last but not least, what can we do to optimize, with that end state? Whether it's, in my example, I'll show here shortly, we'll be focused more on the file side. But like, if there's a single pane of glass where I can come in, get all these answers in with just one tool, that's obviously going to be a lot better than me coming in and trying to kind of, correlate what I see from Kafka, what I see from Spark, what I'm seeing from my data layer, and really trying to make sense of it all. Your better tool is going to be something that can show this to you all in one quote unquote tool. And then also have some proactiveness in terms of like what you can do better. And you're in luck, guys, because that tool does exist. And that tool is called Unravel. And so what I'm going to do here next is I'm going to go into my demo mode here. And I'm going to walk you through some sample scenarios, right? And so when we were talking about the infrastructure here, we'll start off by Kafka. We'll look at Spark, and then we can look at something that we can do from within the data side. And so with Unravel, we do a lot of things here, by the way. But our talk for today is going to be very focused in on the streaming stack, right? And what we can do for customers that look to us for really troubleshooting, essentially their end-to-end streaming pipelines. And so a good place to start would be Kafka. So actually, let me go one page back here. Nice. 1 second. This is how you guys know it's live. And so within the tool itself, we do have various services that we can monitor. We'll focus this first half here on Kafka itself. And so we can go in and we can configure, multiple Kafka clusters, whether it's, maybe you're coming in from CDH or CDP, we can manage that. If you're coming in from a Confluent Kafka standpoint, we have the ability to connect from that standpoint. In my simple environment here, I just have one Kafka cluster. I go ahead and click on that. And now I'm in that cluster configuration. And so up here up in the top, think of these are like KPIs. We want to see things green. Blue means neutral. If we see things in red, that could be a cause for some stuff that we may want to look at. So for, this can play for many hats. Like I'll put on my Kafka admin hat, right? And if I'm coming in here, I definitely want to know if I have under-replicated partitions or partitions that are offline or, controllers that are offline. I won't go into the definitions of this also. I guess I am making an assumption here that you guys have, a baseline understanding of Kafka. But these are things to definitely track to make sure we want these to be green. We don't want it to be red. So for example, if one of my controllers were to go down, this would turn red and it would say 0. And so those are some of the things that you want to look at. Right-hand side, blue is always the color metric's going to be just giving you more informational things. And so, in the last 24 hours in my Kafka cluster, how much information from a byte stamp came in, from bytes in, bytes out, and messages, right? Now, on the whole Kafka cluster, so this could be, one or more of the brokers, we can get some high-level information of bytes in per second, bytes out per second, message in per second. So we can see trends of like the data that's coming in here. Admittedly, guys, this is going to look a lot of like what you would see from Grafana, because we are using those same JMX endpoints. So I'll be truthful from that standpoint. We do more, and I'll get in there shortly. But if you are looking at things of looking at trends of like how data is actually coming through, this is going to be very important. If I'm having some like log flush latency issues, that can affect the performance, and we have the ability to kind of see like how that's running. We can also look at whatever the partition status is here. Yeah, we do have a graph here. Here it is. So if partitions were to go down over a particular time, when did it happen? What was affected? So on and so forth. So from a Kafka admin perspective, this can give me some good bits of information of like, how's my overall Kafka cluster going on? Or, what's the health of it? We can get in on the broker side. And so in my simple environment here, I have 3 brokers, and we can kind of see, what's this one's obviously doing a lot more work than some of the other ones here, but like, we can actually drill in, and we've got the same similar graphs that we had seen in that previous screen, but now you can actually select a specific broker. So if you have some inclination of a particular broker, not being able to keep up with the messages, maybe it could be something like a bad disk or whatever it may be, you do have the ability to drill in from a broker perspective. So again, very, very useful metrics. And so this is really kind of just showing things in terms of like, hey, from a producer side, are the bytes coming in? If my producers aren't sending me any information, obviously bytes in per second would be a lot lower, right? And so I can start answering those questions. Is it a producer issue? No, it looks like the producer is sending information to Kafka. I'm seeing that I'm actually capturing the data. I can rule that out. Now, we've been focusing in on some of more of like the overall kind of infrastructure side of the house. Now let's drill into some things more on the development side, more like on folks that are, trying to manage and monitor what's going on from within the health of topics. So with Kafka, you've got this concept of topics. The best way I like to describe it is think of it as like a database table, right? Where data is being dumped into these topics, and you can have consumer groups where essentially are just listening to these topics. And so you can see here, we've got like this lag test topic, and we can see the bytes in, bytes out, messages in, messages out, which brokers are actually, supporting this particular topic. And so the other nice feature that we have in the tool here is that we do have the ability to show the consumer groups. And so in my case, I've got a couple of Spark streaming applications here. And there is some intelligence that's built in from within Unravel to really kind of show you that, in this particular case, I've got some topics that are not being read. But here I've got one topic that is reading this. I mean, we've got one consumer group, in this case, it's a Spark streaming app, that's reading this particular topic. And it says, okay, so that's good. But here we see that this particular consumer group is stalled, right? Red flag, right? It's colored in red. So me as an admin, or maybe even somebody who's writing my Spark streaming applications to read this, I notice that consumer group here is stalled. So let's go ahead and click on it. So clicking on this particular, now we are looking at things on the consumer group level. So this particular consumer group, in this case, my Spark streaming application, is reading one topic, and you can kind of see exactly what's going on over here. You can see that the status is stalled. Let's go ahead and drill in and see why it's stalled here. And so from a topic detail per second, you can see we've got some messages in, and then it just dies. Okay, interesting. Interesting observations there. If I go into the partition detail, I can look at a couple of things. I can look at like consumer lag. That tells me a story in terms of like the number of lag, over time. And I can tell that I was keeping up, and then all of a sudden the lag is starting to creep, and then, then the lag kind of stays consistent. So it looks like the messages stopped coming in. But I can start monitoring from a lag perspective, like, hey, am I keeping up? You don't want this to continue increasing, but I can see here that there is an issue there. I can go in and look at things from an offset perspective. And so the difference between this is it's going to show you this green line here is going to tell you like what my Spark streaming application and where they are from an offset perspective. And then you've got the purple line here that's going to actually show you this is actually the messages that are going to continue to queue up, right? And from what we can see here, just from a visualization perspective, we can actually see that we were doing okay. We started collecting data, and then all of a sudden, we're not collecting data at all, right? messages continue to increase up, and my downstream, my consumer groups just for whatever reason, I don't know why yet, at least for now, but it stopped reading data, right? And so me as somebody who's looking at this, now I can understand that there could be something going on my Spark streaming application. So, on my whole kind of if I'm following this through, I can feel confident in saying that I don't think it's something to do with Kafka. I don't think that there was an offline partition or there was some issue going on with my Kafka. To me, by looking at these data points, it looks like there's something going on with with the consumer group. Now, if I was using Kafka-like tools, this is where it ends, right? Then you need to jump into Spark UI, and you have to do, you would first have to assume it's Spark UI. You would jump there, you would start looking at that. But with a tool like Unravel, we do tout this whole end-to-end visibility. And so, I can actually jump to that particular Spark application. And so here's that Spark application that was reading the data here. And this is we support many Spark applications. But in this context, this is going to be more of like Spark streaming, right? And so the way to read this is on the left-hand side here, you can see your stream data. You can see the time delay, and you can see the batches that are being affected. And you can see that, there's, we were processing here. There was a bit of a delay on the process, and then all of a sudden we just weren't processing, and the data continued to go up, right? Something was happening here, right? In this particular case. I have the ability to, look at the particular batches. And so like maybe what I do is I would click on this particular point, which would correspond to, I think it's this guy right here. And so if I go into I'm sorry, let me close this here. Sorry, I was loading up my screens earlier. But if I go ahead and look at, where we started seeing a lag, increase in delay in the offset, I can look at that particular micro batch. And so in this particular batch, I can see a couple of things, right? I can see, this is just a word count that we were running here. But then I can look at the input, and I can see like, okay, what is this Spark streaming, at least this particular batch? What was it processing? And it gets that linkage of, we were looking at that stream lag test partition, and we were processing offsets 27248 to 27255, right? So now we've got that correlation of Spark streaming application and what it's reading from Spark, right? But something happened, right? And from what I can tell here, it looks like something, if you ignore this killed here, maybe we want to go to the errors next, right? And so Unravel is collecting all the errors. Think of this as like, a developer going and grepping for errors, across Spark, across the ecosystem here. And here we can see that there's an error here, and it looks like this was actually killed by an Unravel user, right? So just from the screens here alone, I was able to first start off from Kafka, understand there was no issues with producers, understand there was no issues with the Kafka environment, understand that there was definitely some issue going on between the interaction between Kafka and Spark. And now I'm in Spark, I'm actually getting even more details on the Spark side. In this case, looks like somebody actually killed the application, and I can actually get that here too as well from the top here. Now, mind you, one of the things that Unravel does as well as, we do have some intelligence that's built in to give you a couple of things. And now this is a killed application, but you can expect this with, running healthy jobs as well. But we can also give you insights in terms of like some KPIs in terms of the macro batch interval, how long did it take to finish jobs, so on and so forth. And so this is a killed stream. But if it wasn't a killed stream, and I'm trying to figure out like, hey, what should that batching be? Should it be by time? Should it be by size? Whatever it may be, how's that going to impact performance? You now have a good tool to not only visualize this from an observability standpoint, but then also give you some insights as to, here's some of the trends that we're seeing, with your in this case, micro batches, as well as some other things that we'll always do is we'll provide some insights in terms of what you can do to make, that could be some issues that are affecting performance or failures, but some other insights that we provide. So Unravel that goes above and beyond observability. We also provide some proactive intelligence to kind of guide you in the right direction, right? The possibilities that this provides you is the ability to obviously end-to-end have that full-on visibility, but then also too, you can give this up to your, maybe your junior developers, folks that may not have a full grasp of Spark, of Kafka, what's going on. And this ends up being a very, very easy to use one single tool to really kind of help guide you and really pinpoint where the bottlenecks are from within your application or Kafka. I've also seen other customers even just use this Kafka, visualization of, instead of just doing this from the command line, I can actually have this nice UI that's already built in for me. It's already plug and play. It works once I install Unravel. That's also a value add too. Last but not least, we've been talking about the producers. We talked about the Kafka engine. We've talked about Spark, but let's talk about the end state here. And I feel like a lot of times, customers sometimes overlook this, that like, okay, that's great. Let's just say Spark is running as expected, right? But like, one thing that I see a lot, especially with folks working with like junior folks is, when they're doing Spark streaming, maybe they're persisting their data, a lot faster than they should be. They're not batching it fast enough, right? And then that ends up being, maybe they're writing a few kilobyte files, maybe hundreds of kilobyte files per day. And then obviously that adds up, right? The challenge there is you've got, in that particular scenario, you could be creating some really headaches from a small file standpoint, right? Now, whether you're coming from a Hadoop world, whether you're coming from a Databricks world and you're writing the DBFS, maybe you're coming from Dataproc and you're writing this information to DCS, small files is a universal problem. And you want to make sure that, your whatever your end state there is you have it batched enough so that way it's sizable enough that you're not wasting block sizes on the data side, but not small where there's a lot of overhead for the operating engine. It could be Spark SQL, could be Presto, could be anything else. Whatever that engine may be that's going to be reading this data, you want to make sure that that's optimized as well. And what do you know? Unravel has that covered as well. And so what we can do from within Unravel itself is we do have the ability to connect to various metastores. So like maybe like a Glue metastore, maybe like a Hive metastore. And we do provide some insights here. Wanted to give you just a quick sneak peek of like, in this particular instance, I had some, tables that have small files. I can go ahead and click on here and I can actually see the tables that actually have the small files. And then Unravel's not going to create fix this themselves, but whether it's a compaction thing, whether it's maybe kind of getting rid of like the partition structure, whatever it may be, but we do provide that full end-to-end visibility from that standpoint. So kind of wrapping things up here, guys, the one thing, my best practices for you guys is that if you are responsible for managing end-to-end data streaming applications, you need to be equipped enough to really have a tool that's going to speak the same language across the whole entire spectrum here, right? If you're looking, maybe if you're first starting out, definitely get your feet wet in terms of working with some of the stuff that you have out of the box. But when you need to speed up mean time to resolution, when you need to find resource efficiencies in a proactive manner, when you're trying to look at things even from the data side, and you're looking for, think of it as like a DBA in a box almost. Definitely consider a tool like Unravel, where we can support things such as on-prem, such as Databricks is a popular application where Kafka could be the message queuing system, but then Spark streaming from within Databricks is popular as well. So the next time you guys are challenged in understanding where the bottlenecks are from within your real-time streaming application, think of Unravel to give you that single pane of glass for all. And with that, I will stop sharing and I will open it up for questions.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Chris, for that in-depth presentation. I've got a few questions here. I think we have one around Unravel versus out of the box bottlenecks or specific monitoring tools that specialize in certain environments, right? So tell us a bit about, why would someone use Unravel? To what extent? How deep do we go within a specific application versus a monitoring tool that is built for, for Kafka, like lenses, for instance? Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, no, great question there. And in fact, we do have a lot of customers that are dealing with these same questions. I work for Unravel, so obviously I'm going to be more biased, but I'll give you my unbiased opinion. When you're looking at a tool like lenses, great tool. Obviously I did my homework. And so if like majority of your problems are in something that's just Kafka and that's all you care about, then maybe that tool is for you. Same thing with Spark. The one thing that I do see with customers though is what ends up happening is that they end up buying multiple tools, right? Lenses is going to be great from Kafka, but maybe it's not giving them everything they need because maybe it isn't Kafka, because we're talking about multiple distributed, multiple systems, applications. And so maybe you need to look out. And so I've seen folks where it's like they have a hodgepodge of tools to give you that end-to-end, visibility. Why not buy a tool that gives you that end-to-end visibility, right out the gate? A tool that's not going to just give you things from an observability standpoint. So observability is a very popular, kind of a word that's being thrown out there nowadays. And it's a great way of showing that, hey, we're going to give you all the data. It's up to you to correlate this, figure out what you think the issue is, right? We take it a step further by not only providing graphs, tools, et cetera, and so forth that will give you that observability, but we also have that AI built in, that intelligence built in to help push you in the right direction. What this helps is you don't need to have experts looking at, managing these tools. In fact, we've have a number of customers that will have like the admins, the platform folks that will be using it to make sure that the platform is up and running, but then open this up for the developers to say like, hey, maybe from a Kafka side, maybe I need to split up my partitions, or maybe the way that I'm doing my topics, or maybe the way that I'm doing my partitions, I maybe need to increase it, decrease it, so on and so forth. Now, the Kafka admin is not going to really know because they're not the ones writing the applications. And so we see a lot of traction for folks that, maybe coming in from Spark Streaming, they don't really know Kafka too much, but, our screens from Unravel is simple enough for them to kind of understand and say like, okay, maybe I need to retweak my topics, or maybe I need to add more partitions, or maybe even less, whatever it may be. This also opens up the ability for folks to, get more easily tangible insights on, tech that they might not be familiar with. In this case, like a Spark Streaming developer to really get what they need from Kafka in a very nice and easy to use interface like Unravel.
That's great.
Yep.
Hope that answered that question. Tell us a bit about, some of the, you talked a bit about Prometheus and Grafana and things like that. Why would you did touch upon that being an open source tool? We're not an open source tool, but can you tell us why someone would want to use Unravel over an open source technology like a Prometheus or a Grafana or something like that?
That's great. Yeah.
Or out of the box tools, right?
Yeah. And then again, very, very excellent question, because what we see, or what I've seen working with my customer base here, is that you'll have like some more of the experienced, advanced, organizations already doing like Grafana, and we get that a lot. It's like, why would I buy you guys? You guys are proprietary, when I can use kind of like open source, tools like a Grafana, like a Prometheus, right? The truth of the matter is these tools are very great, but they position themselves. And I know I'm probably going to get slapped at with my friends over at Prometheus and Grafana, but like, they're very focused in from an observability standpoint, right? They really want to be like, okay, here's all these metrics. Do you really want to be looking at this in some Excel spreadsheet? Boom, here's some nice pretty graphics. Executives love it. People that like to look at the red blinking lights or the green blinking lights and they turn red and then do something about it. And hey, if that's like how and that's going to fit your use case, go ahead and do that. Where we add additional value is we're doing the same thing. We're connecting into those data points. We can pull in those container level metrics, host level metrics, et cetera, and so forth. But we'll take it a step further. Like I showed you in the presentation that there's a Grafana dashboard for Spark. There's a Grafana dashboard for Kafka. It's really up to you to correlate all this types of information to really kind of understand what the root cause is. Was it the producer? Was it Kafka? Was it my Spark streaming application, right? And so what you're going to get with us is the stuff that you get from Prometheus and Grafana, but it's going to be a single tool, right? It works out of the box. As soon as you install Unravel, all the stuff is already correlated for you. And then the best part about it is that there is some intelligence built in that will help guide you instead of you kind of second guessing. Well, I saw that there was a drop in data. Unravel is going to tell you to the best of its ability where we think that the bottleneck is, and even give you some proactive, hey, try this configuration or look at this line of code because we think that this is where your bottleneck is. And so if you're looking for something that's going to just work out of the box, provide everything that the open source community that I wouldn't say everything, but most stuff that the open source community is doing from an observability standpoint, but you want that easy button, something that's going to tell you, what to do next. Unravel is going to be that tool for you.
That's great answer. Tell us a bit about your views on the kind of cloud monitoring, or because as you already know, a lot of the big data stack, a lot of the stack is moving to the cloud, and a lot of the processing, a lot of the monitoring and observability is really required on cloud platforms. So tell us a bit about the pros and cons of using those, like a CloudWatch or a Datadog or something like that.
Yeah, so that's another great question there, Quack. Whoever asked it. And so you bring up a good point. We did a talk not too long ago about this, but for folks that are moving into the cloud, what they realize is that I don't want to call cloud new, but it's definitely newer, right? And when you're coming in from like an on-prem world, there's tools that have been on the market for years, a little bit more mature, right? And so what you're going to find is you've got a couple of options in the cloud. You've got stuff that comes, native to AWS. So you had mentioned CloudWatch. Azure, they have Azure Analytics and Log Monitoring. All really great tools. What you're going to find with these tools is that they give you the bits and pieces. So there is a DIY type of approach for you to actually make things that are going to make sense out of you. And by the way, this is still going to be more from an observability standpoint, right? It's going to read the logs, show you some nice and pretty graphs. Okay, here's a drop. It's up to you to correlate what happened there, right? So not only is there a DIY aspect, there is some it's going to help you out from an observability standpoint, but above and beyond that, it's up to the user. The other thing to keep in mind too is that while these tools are great, one, you do have there is a consumption-based model for these tools, so that you are paying for this stuff, right? Last but not least, I just totally lost my train of thought, but hold that. But in general, great. Oh yeah, I remember now. It's this is how you know it's live.
Yeah, I'm really challenging you. So
the last thing that to keep in mind too, and this is a hot topic, especially in the cloud, is vendor lock-in. Like if you are all in on AWS, CloudWatch is gonna be great for you. If you're in Azure, log monitoring is gonna be great for you. If you have a multi-tiered application, maybe using some of the cloud native monitoring tools may not be the best thing. Now you could probably do a hodgepodge, use APIs and connect all this stuff. But again, you're going more down that DIY route. Are you in the business of creating these observability monitoring platforms, or are you in the business of making great products for your customers, right? leave all that stuff to a tool that does this, for a living, and that would be us.
Okay. Last question, one for the road. So I think, given this presentation is more geared towards kind of performance and reliability, tell us a bit about, I know you touched on it a bit, giving the demo and so on. How can, users who don't have Unravel, how would they manually get to, root cause analysis or get to the best performance of their applications without an Unravel? So would they have to go in like in every application and run their own? Because one, you have the monitoring side, right, which is fine, which is a level more detail, but then you have to action on. You have to get to that root cause and get to why the data is like that, right? So without Unravel, how would someone know that they get the best optimized configuration and they're optimized for cost?
Well, let me paint a picture here first, and then we'll talk. Then I'll address your questions. So, I hate to say it, but like with real-time streaming applications like this, like Kafka Spark streaming, when something goes down, that has a more immediate impact because whether it's like a fraud detection system, whether it's like a ticketing system that you need to be everything needs to be up to date as much as possible. When that goes down, that's a big problem, and people are struggling to find out what the root cause is, and there's a multitude of reasons. Right now, we kind of gone through like some of the stuff that you get out of the box that you can use, but the one thing that I left out, and maybe I could have stressed a little bit more, is that there is a level of expertise. Like you need somebody who knows Kafka that's going to go in there, not only see that there was an issue from an observability standpoint, but then know what lever to push, what configuration that they need to do, what, restructuring of their topics and their partitions or whatever it may be. Like you need to have good in-house people there because the time lost is lost time to revenue. And so you want to make sure that you stock up from an expertise standpoint. Same thing with Spark, same thing on the data side. Without a tool like Unravel, you're going to need to make sure you have folks that they should not be junior, because when this stuff breaks down, you need to fix this as soon as possible. And and that's why I think we're positioned very well for real-time streaming customers, because not only can we show things from an observability standpoint, but we can shortcut that whole trial and error, figuring out exactly where the issue is. We can tell you right then and there. And now, instead of being a downtime of hours to days, now we can take that down to minutes.
Great. Right. I think we're running out of time. So we're going to wrap up the webinar there. Any last minute words you want to, or kind of words of wisdom you want to tell the audiences before we let them go?
Yeah, I'm more of a self-plug for myself, guys. But I lead the solutions engineering group over here in Unravel Data. Solutions engineer will tell you exactly what it is. If we don't think it's a good fit, or if it is, we will. And so I want to make sure, based on my experience, we worked with a lot large, small, medium-sized companies working on these same exact problems. So I would love to have a conversation with you. If you are having problems with this, let's have a conversation. And if it works out, we would love to continue that.
Great. Well, that's all the time we have for today for this webinar. Just a reminder, this webinar is available instantly on demand, so feel free to share this with your colleagues or peers via the same website link. If you are watching on demand and want to ask a question, feel free to email us at hello@unraveldata.com or email Chris directly at chris@unraveldata.com. Let us know what you think about the webinar. it's gonna ask you to rate this webinar. So if you have any comments about things you'd like to hear in the future, or just generally if you love this webinar, give it 5 stars. And that's all the time we have. Thank you very much, Chris, for sharing your expertise once again.
Yeah.
And do check out our upcoming webinars. We have our Chief Data Architect, Chief Data Officer, VP Engineering, Sandeep, who will be sharing some great insights from his time at Intuit and building a self-service data platform. And then we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Thank you very much. Cheers, Chris.
Great. Thanks, Quack. Thanks, folks.
Bye.